Welcome to Smart Route, the podcast by CallTrackingMetrics, where you'll hear stories from businesses at the intersection of marketing, customer experience, and sales. We're sitting down with business leaders and industry experts to dive deep into the path they took to find success. Here's your host, Courtney Tyson.
Hello, listeners, and thank you for joining us for episode 19 of Smart Route. I'm your host and strategic partnership manager at CallTrackingMetrics, Courtney Tyson. Episode 19 is focused on influencer marketing. We'll talk about how it's evolved, what brands should consider, and what they should avoid in order to be successful working with influencers. And here to educate us and share her wealth of expertise is Cait Weingartner, VP of Strategy at Collectively, a full-service influencer marketing agency. Welcome, Cait.
Thanks for having me. So excited to be here and talk more today.
We are so excited to have you. Thank you for being here. Before we get started, I'm going to share a little bit more about you with our listeners. So Cait is a seasoned social media and marketing executive who has built Collectively's strategy practice from the ground up, bringing together her experience across social and digital to push the creative side of influencer marketing and drive innovation within the industry. What's really cool about Cait is that she's also a retired creator herself. She ran a successful lifestyle blog for almost a decade, which gave her a front row seat to the evolution of creator marketing, from the days of blogs and sidebar ads to brand partnerships and sponsored content collaboration. So she joined Collectively nearly 7 years ago, and since then she's developed creative strategy for over 200 influencer-centric campaigns and long-term partnerships for clients like Meta, QuickBooks, Target, L'Oreal, and Converse. Whew. And with all that said, Cait, congrats on your success in this space. It's wonderful. Can you tell us a little more about Collectively and your role at the agency?
Yeah, well, thank you for that great intro. As you mentioned, Collectively is a full service influencer marketing agency. So think of your, media agency or a creative agency. We do the same thing, but we focus on influencer. With that definition is incredibly broad. We consider influencer marketing to be everything from activating a celebrity, that really is in that in-between spot of that's gotten so blurry between influencer and traditional celebrity. It can be casting talent into a brand's television commercial or for a brand-led photo shoot. It can be a product collaboration that is in partnership with the influencer and has their feedback throughout the research and development process. And then it also can be sponsored content across the whole social ecosystem. So we focus on one thing, but that one thing is very broad and it has a lot of things within it. Collectively was founded nearly 10 years ago by female founders. We are now a global company with a presence in both the US and the UK. And we have really amazing top tier clients like the few you had rattled off. As you mentioned, I joined 7 years ago, which feels like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. I lead a really brilliant team that's focused on developing influencer program strategies that really push what's possible and surprise our clients with unexpected ways to partner with influencers, and are really rooted in consumer insights, performance data, and cultural and content trends. I've always said that we have the best job around because of the balance between kind of left and right brain thinking. It's a mix of research and creativity. There is a new, thing to be exploring or, dreaming up every single day. And our work takes so many different shapes and forms, but it's always about problem solving and, finding those new solutions to create amazing work for our clients.
That's great. It sounds like a very fun job, very hard in that, you're having really come up with the ideas that work, right? But it sounds exciting. So I think what's really great about, or very cool about you, Cait, is that obviously you've been with Collectively for a really long time, but you've had experience as a successful influencer yourself. So like we've said, you've had this front row seat to influencer marketing and how it's evolved. I would love for you to share with us more about how influencer marketing has evolved over the years.
Yeah, well, it's grown up a lot. I started my career in general post-college in really the early days of social media marketing. And, as you mentioned, was a blogger myself as a side hustle. And note I said blogger versus influencer because that really wasn't even a thing just yet. Like we're talking the pre-Instagram days back in 2010. I finally decided to merge my two worlds in 2015 when I joined the Collectively team because I saw the parallels, starting to begin between the early days of social and what was shaping up to become influencer marketing. At that time, influencer was really still just a bright, shiny new thing in the marketing space. Influencers were often just tacked onto brand campaigns, like we could call it the last minute as an extension. And scale was really the name of the game in that. era, where brands were really obsessed with both a volume of influencers they were activating. We'd be like, we must have 100 people on this program. And also we're really fixated on vanity metrics like follower count. And things it's evolved over time into a much more sophisticated marketing channel. I would say one of the biggest evolution areas has been measurement and data. We are able to really get so much more granular on content performance and audience insights to really understand what is working and what's not, and look for performance trends and optimization areas really quickly. We're building out our influencer strategies today, really augmented by that performance data, consumer insights, and category research to have a really strong point of view on what is going to be most effective for our clients to deliver on their marketing goals. And it's also gotten a lot more complex. As I kind of touched on earlier, that definition of influencer has become really broad and blurry. It is everything from celebrities to people you just love following, but would probably never consider themselves to be a content creator. There are also new platforms and content formats emerging on a daily basis, like Hello, Be Real, or the million of features that Instagram seems to be trying to cram into that app. And we've also seen TikTok really accelerate the speed of content trends, where brands are really trying to just keep up and remain relevant.
Interesting. So just to kind of recap, it's interesting to think about how, influencers, I guess, before even they were influencers, right? They were kind of like this, an extension to a strategy, but they weren't the strategy. And now it's kind of strategies are being formed around them. And there are tools out there that kind of help, build up those strategies and inform them as well. So let's talk a little bit more about, I guess, what brands should know when considering influencer marketing. Is it for everybody? What should brands be considering when thinking about entering this sort of a strategy?
Ooh, that's a really great question. I would say yes, it can be for everybody, but no, it can't be for everything. I think it's really important to start with a clear understanding of your goals and be both realistic and specific. So, for example, one influencer post probably isn't going to be able to build both awareness for your brand new product or brand that no one knows about, generate conversation and rich engagement on that content, and drive to your website for conversion. That's just a lot, and is also just not how the consumer journey works or the marketing funnel. It's also really important to understand that influencer marketing is different than traditional advertising, and content that a brand is producing themselves. I think, is the most important thing to really understand and get comfortable with from the beginning. This is a collaboration really between two brands. The influencer, it has their own brand that needs to find the creative balance between what you want to talk about and your brand's priority messages and what you want to be selling ultimately, and the influencer's own personality, unique content style, and their community. So recognize that you don't have complete creative control, and focus on finding the right influencer partners and then setting them up for success within that content production with a smart strategy and a solid brief.
Okay. So finding those right influencers, getting on board with them, and kind of creating a joint venture relationship, right? Understanding what you need from them, vice versa, understanding who they are, what works for them, because that's what's ultimately going to work for you and your brand.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about what brands should consider when looking into influencer marketing, but what about you talked a little bit about, I guess, the relationship with that influencer. Let's talk about measuring campaign success. So once you've entered into this relationship with this influencer, your campaign is a go. You talked about tools out there now that kind of help you measure. What is the best way to measure campaign success?
Yeah, there's really a lot of nuance to the influencer space and a lot of different KPIs that can be set to really measure the impact. It can be, awareness measured by impressions through to more lower funnel KPIs like site traffic or conversion. And with that, those KPIs in mind, there's a lot of nuance that can really impact your approach and performance from the partnership types. So is it a one-off, one-time type partnership with an influencer? Is it someone that you're activating continuously over time and thinking of them as an ambassador? Are you, sending them just product and, not compensating them and just letting them try your brand and, not necessarily having as much control or high expectations for them to publish? There's also considerations that can impact performance around, what type of influencer that is. Is it, family and parenting, where maybe those audiences are more active on Instagram and Facebook versus a Gen Z, kind of cool girl who is probably hanging out and creating videos on TikTok and YouTube. So we really start by thinking through what that overarching story should be across all pieces of content with those goals and KPIs in mind, and really go into specifics, defining, what those goals are, who are the right influencers. I'll hammer on this again. I know I just did, a few questions ago, but it's a really big one. You should be thinking about their audience size and, what they're going to deliver for you based on those goals. And also just consider who your target consumer is consuming content from. Brands often get too hung up on those follower counts and don't spend nearly enough time really looking through each influencer's, social posts and their content style, seeing how their community engages, what they like, and also what's going on in their personal life and their own story that can really form a natural connection to the brand. Other considerations are, what are we asking them to do? How and where should the brand be integrated? What platform should content be published on? And when should it go live? So with all of these kind of core strategy elements, there's a lot of different measurement opportunities depending on those brand goals, from looking at the content engagement and comment relevance, a little bit of quant and qual analysis there, to measuring click-through rate or the quality of the site traffic, or using that influencer content and combining it with paid media for really targeted reach that can get you closer to conversion.
Okay. So in a sense, it's working with the influencer, understanding their style and how it's going to meet, I guess, kind of what you want from them, and kind of strategizing around that. Let's talk about, I guess, the pitfalls sorry, to avoid with influencer marketing. What would you say are some of the major pitfalls to avoid when diving into this?
I think it is, one, not being intimidated by, needing to do a million things at once and spend, all of your budget on influencers and activate, 100 influencers all the time. Like, really recognizing that one of the best things about influencer is its flexibility and how easily it can be scaled. But also just realizing that it's a great space to test and learn. I think getting started, I often see brands really just not take enough time to really vet those partners that they're working with, and thinking of it as a relationship versus a transaction, which we've touched on before. I think it's really understanding that these are individual people that you're working with, and they'll all likely have their own story to tell about your brand, and really understand as individuals what's going to work best for their audience. And that's probably different, influencer one versus influencer two. It's about thinking of it as a collaboration and allowing them to help shape how the content comes to life, and having, really recognizing that there also needs to be a clear value exchange for this partnership. So set aside some budget to compensate influencers for their work, give them time and space to create the content and not try to just jam a million marketing messages into each post, and also just create a relationship that has open lines of communication for questions and feedback from both parties.
It's interesting to think about, you as a company, if you're in influencer marketing, you want to have those really great relationships with those influencers, right? Because ultimately they're going out and they're representing your brand. And so they're, in a sense, building relationships for you and your company, and representing you. So that's why it's important to, make sure you understand them and they understand you. Everyone's on the same page, right?
Yeah. And I mean, audiences these days can also sniff out, an ad versus something, a situation where an influencer's just doing it to get the money versus something that is genuinely aligned with their interest. So spending that time, making that extra effort, really finding the right partners versus just, any partner, or, the biggest influencer you can find that'll accept the partnership, will really go a long way.
Sure. Yeah, me being someone who is easily influenced by influencer marketing, I can definitely, like you said, sniff out when it's a paid ad, or if it's something that influencer truly believes in and truly does utilize in their daily life, or it has an impact on their life, right? Let's talk a little bit more about, the economy. There's obviously talks of a recession. A lot of companies are refocusing their marketing budgets. I've read that companies are still spending on influencer marketing. Why do you think this is still a priority and companies should continue to prioritize influencer marketing?
We really saw this in a big way starting in the back half of 2020 after the world really came to that screeching halt during the early days of COVID. And it continued all through 2021 and to today. I think influencer marketing is really now being seen as a critical piece of that marketing mix. We are involved earlier in the planning process alongside other agency partners versus just being tacked on at the end as an extension. And we're also definitely getting a bigger slice of that budget, both because of the efficacy of the channel and also the reality that, traditional advertising channels just aren't as effective anymore, especially with Gen Z and younger audiences. We're
Mhm.
on our phones while we're watching TV. We're, multitasking. We're not watching live TV and seeing the commercials. We're paying more for memberships to avoid ads. People have ad blockers installed in their browser. So those traditional kind of tried and true channels just aren't working. And there's no better way to just reach those consumers by kind of sneaking in where they're already consuming content. There's also a really big element of flexibility that's built into influencer marketing. And I think that's where brands kind of move money around and will focus on influencer and pull money from other channels in times of uncertainty. It is super scalable, as I mentioned. You can have $1,000 campaign or $1 million campaign, and it's also much more agile than other channels. You're not spending a year producing a 30-second television spot that all of a sudden, something happens and it's no longer relevant or isn't going to land with the audience, and you have to start from scratch. We can really move quickly to capitalize on trends or optimize even to, apply learnings based off of performance and tweak to really lean into what's working and avoid what's not. And also our channel that can really easily kind of keep the lights on for brands in between those campaign moments, with just, more influencer led, always on content. So it's less about, hey, this is a great gift for Mother's Day. And it's more just about, everyday use of how your brand or product are seamlessly fitting into their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I couldn't agree more. As I said before, I am easily influenced by influencer marketing. It works for me. Obviously, I'm a part of a younger generation, but I even see my parents, on their phones, on Instagram, looking up products and celebrities and people that they've followed throughout their lives who are now still influencing them. It's just been so interesting to kind of watch that evolve and happen. And I'm excited for more companies to kind of dive into this space because I love when they utilize influencers to tell their stories, but I also love to see how other folks use products and real reviews of products. I want to know how everyday people, liked the sheets they bought on Amazon, right? Because that's what's going to make me buy it. So I'm all for this. I think it's a great concept, and I'd love to see more companies diving into it and utilizing it more. Before we conclude here, Cait, is there anything that you would like to plug on behalf of you or collectively?
Well, I love the kind of 2 points you just made there, Courtney. With one, influencer marketing isn't just for Gen Z or millennials. There is a way to reach every possible demographic through the right influencer strategy. I think often it gets written off as not working for older generations or men or B2B brands, but really there's a way to do it and make it work for anyone. And I think secondly, I liked your point around it being like there's an interesting element of both discovery and reviews and testimonial built into it, and thinking about that, because that's really where the word of mouth. We love learning about new products, and that's how advertising worked before we had technology and screens and all that good stuff. It was just asking for recommendations from people that you trusted and then going off of those recommendations. So I think about that in its simplest form, as what is going to work with influencer. But as far as plugs go, 'tis the season of Q4 is on the horizon. Holiday planning is likely already underway. So it's a really great time of the year for brands to start experimenting with influencer, for Q4 priorities or holiday campaigns, to really, start learning about how the channel works, what type of influencers and content best resonates with their target consumer, and really use this moment as a testing phase for 2023 planning, throughout all of next year. I would say, don't be intimidated whether you're doing it yourself or giving us a call and looking for an agency partner to help you execute, there is a way to do it. And you can start small, really focus on just finding those right partners, and also lean on those influencers for their input and ideas. It's really about just thinking like your consumer and aiming to show up alongside the content they're already consuming as seamlessly as possible versus disrupting that with what is an obvious ad. So put your own kind of personal preferences and biases aside and really put yourself in the shoes of your audience, and go from there.
That was, I think, a wonderful recap. And you said exactly what I wanted to say, is that, your message is, do not be intimidated by influencer marketing. It is for everybody, right? Maybe not everything, like you said, but it's for everybody. It is flexible, it is scalable, it is agile. Everyone should try it. It works. It's been working forever. It's evolving even more. So don't be afraid. And I would highly encourage our audience to check out Collectively, work with Cait's team to educate yourself and dive on in. Cait, it's been a pleasure chatting with you and learning from you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is great.
This has been wonderful. So thanks again for sharing your knowledge with us. And thanks to our listeners too. That's a wrap. Thanks for your support as always. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at SmartRoutePod to keep up and engage with us. We'll see you next time for our 20th episode. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Smart Route Podcast. Share your favorite takeaways with us on Twitter at SmartRoutePod. Smart Route is brought to you by CallTrackingMetrics, and you can find more at calltrackingmetrics.com/podcast. Follow along for ideas and conversations that will inspire your own business path forward. Speaking of smart paths, are your marketing, sales, and service teams on the same page? In today's remote world, it's easy to get disconnected. CallTrackingMetrics can help. We empower smart marketing teams to determine the best route for campaigns by showing exactly which ad campaigns are driving conversations that convert. Operational teams can use that data to automate call flows and power contact center success. Visit CallTrackingMetrics.com to see why more than 100,000 customers around the globe trust CallTrackingMetrics to manage communications for their marketing, sales, and service teams.